boys, what we're going to do is break down the scene where Mark Christie and Eduardo have dinner with Sean Parker. In particular, I'm going to be focusing on the influence that Sean has over Mark and the scene, and Eduardo's caution. Okay, we have these two characters. This is almost their bout here in this first scene, where we've got the logical, the pragmatic Eduardo going toe-to-toe with the charismatic, the flashy Sean. So we're going to see a number of different film techniques that Fincher uses in order to convey this sense of tension between the two. This is the first time that we really get to see a conflict that threatens Eduardo's relationship and involvement with the company, as we begin to see that Sean becomes increasingly throughout the film an ever more present and prickly influence, according to Eduardo.
Crashed out of two pretty big internet companies in spectacular fashion. He's had a reputation with drugs.
He also founded the companies.
We don't need him. He's here.
Okay, so already we get Eduardo, we don't need him, and an excited response from Mark, he's here. Okay, so already the tension is set up that the two of them aren't on the same page, so let's see how Sean adds to this sense of conflict.
No, take your time. And he does own a watch.
I'm Sean Parker.
How do you do?
You must be Eduardo and Christy and Mark. Great to meet you. Great to meet you. You guys don't have anything in front of you.
One quick note I'd like to make here, the costuming. We have Sean and Eduardo in expensive suits. Okay, Mark typically dressed down there, but just focusing on the two of these, if we're posing these two against each other, they're wearing quite expensive suits. They're vying for some sense of class, some sense of authority over the scene. Okay, so it's just an interesting point to make that the two of them are sharing some similar choices in their wardrobe that's going to reflect some sense of control or some sense of authority.
Tori,
We were waiting.
Hey, baby boy.
can you pronounce some things? The lacquered pork with that ginger confit, tuna tartare, and the lobster claws that'll get us started. Christy, what do you like to drink?
An appletini.
Which is a really brief movement there from Eduardo as he responds to Sean's charismatic question to Christy. So it's almost this protective or defensive arm movement. Okay, he is seeing Sean as a threat. Okay, it's a visual cue here of his discomfort, that he is uncomfortable with the influence of Sean or the charisma that he has. Puts his arm around his girlfriend as a sense of defense. He's clearly not comfortable with the situation.
Great. For those.
From that point on, it was a Sean-a-thon.
Okay, and we're going to get into the Sean-a-thon. A couple of things I'd like you to focus on as we're watching it here. Okay, a couple of techniques being used. The music. Okay, Trent Reznor, who's the composer, his score Magnetic plays during this scene. Okay, and it permeates the rest of the scene. It underlays the entire course of this scene. Okay, it's a deep synth and bass, and it's heavy with tension. Okay, couple that with the slow motion that's being used here. Okay, it emphasizes this feeling of a drunken influence that Sean is having on the three of them, particularly on Mark. Okay, and it's a disquieting influence. Okay, it's anxiety inducing when coupled with this deep synth of the music. Okay, so a few things to go back through here just in that quick montage that I'd like to focus on. Okay, got the framing here. I'd like you to notice how previously we had Mark, Christy, and Eduardo sharing the frame together. As Sean is beginning to influence the scene more and more, notice how Eduardo now has been separated from Mark and Christy. He has his own shot, which I'll point to in a moment. So this separate framing between the three of them, it splits them as a result of Sean's influence. Okay, you can see who's buying into Sean's charisma here. We've got Christy and Mark, playing along, having fun, and we've also got a single shot of a lone Eduardo, the skeptic. Okay. We've also got here a quick pan. That arrow is the direction of the pan being used here, reflecting this sense of a watchful Eduardo. He is skeptical of Sean. And that quick pan is him looking directly at Sean. Going to see how that reverses in a moment.
The question was, what did you talk about?
Let's see how that pan gets thrown back at him. Okay, so that quick pan back, you can see down the bottom here, it's now Sean taking control of the scenario, and we're going to see a variety of quick cuts. Now, a cut is the length of a frame or a shot, and we've got a number of cuts here happening in sequence and happening very rapidly. Okay, and this is reflecting the energy and the discombobulating nature of Sean. Okay, the way in which he is influencing the scene in a very energetic way. Okay, and in a way that is not comfortable or regular. Okay, and as always, we've got the music here. The music intensifies again.
He took us through his episode.
So there's a number of different cuts there as the food comes out, as they're drinking more and more. So this sense of his influence and the steamroller influence that it has is beginning to take effect more and more. Okay, we're going to jump ahead just to another few techniques Finch is using here just to finish off the scene.
They want your idea.
Okay. And the focus here is going to be particularly on Mark. Notice we're back to sharing the frame, but I'd like you to be focusing on how Mark is changing throughout the course of the rest of this scene. How he is, up until this moment, been relatively quiet, but he's going to become very much influenced by Sean.
And they want you to say thank you while you, excuse me, wipe your chin and walk away.
That's what happened to you?
And delusional.
Yes, but there'll be payback.
Okay, so in response to that sense of Sean being delusional that we get from Eduardo, he is remaining skeptical. We see that in his expression there, the closed eyes in response to whatever Sean is saying at this particular point. Instead, when we look at Mark, we get an intrigued character. We get someone who is hanging on his every word. Okay, we're separating the two now. Despite them sharing the frame again, we can see both of their reactions here.
Payback in case. I brought down the record companies with Napster in case they'll suffer for their sins too.
Sorry, you didn't.
As Eduardo begins to question, Mark is still sitting in the background, hanging on Sean's every word. Okay, and as we jump a little bit further forward.
The Facebook is cool. That's what it's got going for it. Yeah. You don't want to ruin it with ads because ads aren't cool.
Exactly.
It's like you're throwing the greatest party on campus and someone saying it's got to be over by 11.
That's exactly right.
You don't even know what the thing is yet. How big it can get, how far it can go. This is no time to take your chips down. $1 million isn't cool. You know what's cool?
You? $1 billion.
Okay, so we get a bit of a mic drop there, but what I'd like us to be focusing on in particular is how Mark goes from nodding approval to that repetition that we get in his language there. I said exactly that. It's that annoying voice in the background there that is echoing, confirming everything that Sean is saying, and that excited repetition is denoting Sean's influence. Okay, I'll point you back to Eduardo's comment. He owned Mark after that dinner. Okay, and the way in which Mark changes from that nodding approval to that excited repetition is evidence of that clear influence that Sean has had throughout the course of this dinner. Knowingly or not, later on, perhaps Sean becomes a more purposefully separating, dividing character between the two. But at this stage, all we're looking at is the influence of the character and how, despite Eduardo's best efforts, Mark buys into it. Okay, boys, hope this has helped.